Welcome into the Backroads Bill podcast. I'm Ben, and this week we are speaking to a guest that has a very unique way of doing art that's very outdoorsy, literally and figuratively, and very Backroads-esque. It actually fits really, really well with the theme of what this podcast is. And what this gentleman does is he creates these absolutely gorgeous aerial pieces of art by creating patterns in the snow using snowshoes. It's really, really neat. If you've ever seen, like crop circles are kind of like this, but any of that art from above, the aerial art, where they create patterns on the ground, he does that in these snow areas with snowshoes. It's really cool. And we got a chance to chat with him about his process, about how he goes about making the art itself, and he's coined himself as the Snowshoe Art Guy, which is a very on the nose name, which is fantastic. It was an amazing chance to get to talk to him, and we get to talk again about not just his art, but also working with some big companies, the PGA, of course, the Golf Association, his Olympic ring art that he did very recently to commemorate the Winter's Olympics that just passed a few weeks ago, and many more pieces, including a little Blue Jays one that he did when they went into the World Series, and so many more. So we're going to get to all of that, but first, we do need to thank today's lead sponsor of this episode, Source for Sports. It's almost that time of year. Early mornings at the rink, fresh notebooks and backpacks, and a community gearing up for another great season of varsity sports. At Source for Sports North Bay, we're proud to be part of it all. Whether it's finding your kid's first pair of skates, gearing up for tryouts, or outfitting your team for the season ahead, we've got you covered. Because here, we're not just a sports store, we're neighbors, coaches, teammates, and fans. And we're proud to cheer you on every shift, step, and stride of the way. Visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street and let us help you along your way. All right, today on the podcast, we are pleased to be joined by the Snowshoe Art Guy, by self-proclaimed Kim Asmussen. Kim, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome into the Backroads Bill podcast.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
And you know, Ben, not self-proclaimed, because when you Google snowshoe art, there are really about 3 people that come up, and there other 2 are other places in the world. So we have someone significant, kind of like the sauna guy that we had on that wrote the sauna book. So we're having a privilege, because in this case, there are artistic forms in so many ways, and in this case, it's the your paintbrushes of the snowshoes. The canvas can be a wide open lake. And this is an incredible story. And people have really taken to this. Oh, I think this is something truly Canadian, because snowshoes, wide open spaces. And Kim's from Schreiber, which is just a little west of Terrace Bay. And I had the opportunity, which will probably come up in this podcast, that I went up there and had a work of art bestowed on me. And so we'll probably talk a bit about that. But Kim, no, really, and he's also an ice sculptor, and that'll probably come into our conversation as well. But take us back to, how did you get started at this? I know the story, but how did you get started on this? And tell us a little bit about your first design, because he is known as the Snowshoe Art Guy.
Well, actually, I was doing my first crack at ice sculpting. I was making a baby grand piano for the Winter Carnival, and I had an old pool liner, so I had it all dug out. Anyways, it ended up being a train wreck. It got warm, didn't freeze, but as I was Googling stuff about it, this image came up of a guy doing snowshoe art, these large geometric shapes in Europe. So I'm one of those people who like lines and whatnot. So I said, you know what, I'm going to take a crack at it. So the first one I did, I was actually at Dorian Public School. And I said, okay, it was an equilateral triangle. So I had the old compass out the old fashioned way and measured it off. And then I broke it up into smaller things. So it wasn't a real fancy one. And then I couldn't get a picture of it because it was on the ground. So, okay, I need to get some elevation. So I did the same one in the parking lot out at the arena in Schreiber. And everyone thought, oh, wow, was that ever neat? But looking back at it, I don't think so.
Well, yeah, you just decided you were going to do this as a retired principal and of course a lifelong resident up there. But Ben, when you think about it, you've got to put the snowshoes on and you've got to do these designs. And so, Kim, Tell us about, and you can tell us about approximately how many you've done and the conditions you need to work in, but how you do these designs, because it's just not a matter of you go out onto this white canvas, being the small lake or a ball field or something, wherever you can to do this. But tell us something about the intricacies of putting all a design together.
Well, again, it depends on what kind of design I'm doing. Sometimes it'll just, the one you and I did, had trees in it, so you're sort of making up the trees as you're going along. But quite often they're geometric shapes. They're based off of a square, a hexagon, octagon, or something like that. So yeah, you just have to make sure you've got it right. I quite often work it into a circle, because then your distances are consistent. You're not walking out so far at a certain degrees and then waiting for the tape measure to stop, and you stop too far. Originally, I thought you had to be really, really precise, and quite often, sometimes you do. But if you're within a foot or two, and I deal with feet. I don't use meters. People are saying, "Well, we've had the metric system." I came here, I think, in 1978, and Ontario hadn't totally converted to metric, because I hit Kenora and it said 300. I said, "Oh, 3 hours, I'll be in Thunder Bay." But anyways, it's just easier. Quite often, I'll break a distance up like 50 meters or 150 feet. If you break it up into sections of 6, it's a lot easier. That's 25 feet, as opposed to you start getting into decimals of how many meters. So I stick with the feet. It's just simpler to work with.
Yeah, and Ben does a great job in packaging all these Backroads Bill podcasts together, and you'll see a lot of images of some of your designs, and so that kind of leads me to when I was up there, we went to this little lake called Jason Lake, a few kilometers off of the Trans-Canada Highway, Highway 17, and I was just amazed. How are we going to do this? Because I was bold enough before we got there, Ben, was to ask to have a design done that would represent Backroads Bill. And I thought about it for a bit. What's he going to be able to do? And I know we dashed up there and came back, and we only had a certain amount of time. So I suggested for Backroads Bill like a compass, because a compass, navigation on the back roads, and then Kim just took the concept and made it even better with the trees and things. He called it a simple design, but when Brian Emblem, who's been on the podcast as well, we got up there, we were truly amazed at what is going on through his mind as we kind of wandered out on this kind of cold day and had to say, how's this going to shape out? And then, of course, at the end of it, as in all the designs some of them are incredibly intricate, and the most recently you've done ones to celebrate the Olympics, et cetera, et cetera. So it is truly phenomenal of what you do. But some of the designs you can use technology for that as well, Kim.
Yeah, technology, as far as everyone says, do you use a GPS? But you're the GPS expert. I'm just a compass guy. So no, I don't know how it would work, but yeah, I like the tape measure just because I just know what it is. And then it's based upon geometric shapes.
Yeah, but some of them you draw them, and some of them you have used AutoCAD.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah. Like usually I'll put them into an AutoCAD just to figure out the measurements and see how many, like, I'll put dowels out, then it might skip every third or fourth dowel. So from there, you can sort of figure out the pattern and usually I'll look at pictures and grab the picture, throw it into AutoCAD and see if I can do something with it. Or sometimes it just depends on the day. I'll say, you know what, I don't feel like doing all that extra work, so I'll keep it simple. And it's funny that sometimes the simplest ones are the ones people like more than the more complicated one, unless it's just the Facebook algorithm, how it goes out. But it's kind of funny how which ones people like at times.
Yeah, no, we'll mention this at the end, and there'll probably be a link that for the viewers and listeners, go to Kim Asmussen on Facebook, and then the Snowshoe Art Guy on Instagram. Correct?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So that's really and you really need to feast your eyes on all these designs, because you're truly amazed. I mean, Ben, they're all shot with drones afterwards.
I was going to say,
sometimes we were in this little lake. It was slightly elevated by the road, and you could see out. But truly, afterwards, to see the work of art, the drone shots tell all, and they truly are spectacular. And again, this is a Canadian thing, has a huge following, and people looking forward to seeing all these different designs. So, take us most recently to the Olympic designs then, and what you thought about how those came about.
Well, it was just simple. With the Olympics coming up, I figured I should do something, and it was a simple type design, but again, with the rings overlapping, you had to fiddle with that quite a bit. And that one was sort of funny. I missed the perfect day. my wife and I had committed to doing some announcing and whatnot at the figure skating competition. So I didn't get out of there till 3:30 on this bluebird day, and I knew the shadows would be coming down. So if you look at it closely, there's probably about this much space between each of the pairs sets of footsteps, snowshoe tracks, because I was trying to get done it quickly, and it actually turned out quite nice like that. So 5:30 hitting the shadows were all over the maple leaf and whatnot. So, and it was supposed to be cloudy the next day. So to say the least, I wasn't the happiest person in the world.
Yeah, well,
But
I was out there. And again, you've talked about the simple tools of the tape measure and the compass and pacing and whatnot. But Ben, while we were out there, Kim was telling us about the conditions have to be perfect to go about doing this. And so tell us what is the perfect day to go out and do snowshoe art.
I would say -20, sunny. Doesn't have to be totally breeze free, but 20-kilometer-hour winds are usually okay where they're not filling in the tracks too quick. So I would say that's a perfect day. And then as the winter progresses, you have more leeway with your time. Like around Scriber Terrace Bay, 3:30 in December, if you can get something done, you're pretty well hoofed with the shadows from the trees are blocking the view. So where now it's 5:30 or you can get some shots in. And again, I find like a lot of them I try to get Lake Superior in the background because they're close to the lake. So later on in the day the sun is lower, so you've got that gray glare off the lake as opposed to first thing in the morning or once the sun's hit the shape. The lake is so much more blue. So and it's hard around here just to have the shape for 2 days sometimes. So you do it the one day, you're not necessarily going to get that nice picture. And I got lucky with that, the Olympic rings, because the next day I had the drone in my vehicle, and I was outside work. I was actually doing some ice sculpting, and I kept my eye on the clouds. And as soon as there was a bit of a break, I zipped up to the lake. It was only 5 kilometers away, and I was able to get a half decent picture of it and some video.
Yeah, all stories from the Great White North. Ben.
So when I first saw this, my immediate thought was Art Attack. Bill, do you remember Art Attack?
Yeah, Art Attack, yeah.
So I don't think it's still on. I don't think it's been playing for many, many years. But that was because they always used to do the large kind of overshot, and they would do all these like really cool arts things, very similar to kind of what Kim, what you're doing. And I was curious, as somebody who's not an artist, I was kind of thinking about like, we've talked about snowshoes before on the show quite a bit. There's a bajillion different kinds of snowshoes. And then it's kind of interesting because like the snowshoe is in effectively your paintbrush and the snow is your canvas. So do you use different kind of snowshoes and different, does that go into your mind, or am I kind of overthinking this maybe a little bit too much?
Well, I do. I'll grab my wife's snowshoes sometimes if, like when I start the year off, I always do a large snowflake, and there's a lot of backing up. You step in to make one of the little off the, like there's 6 sides. What am I looking for? The frost lines, I guess. So I'll use hers just because it's shorter and I can back up easier. And last year I did the dream catcher, and it was feathers. And I thought I could walk in, turn around, but it didn't look good. So I had to walk in on each part of the feather and back up. So I'll use this shorter snowshoes when I'm doing tight turns and things like that. But people show up with the other kind, the old-fashioned snowshoes. So if it's a geometric type shape, I'll put them in one area, and they'll pack that part and maybe skip 2 and then pack another part. So I try to get a packing pattern. Probably most people don't notice, but I do, so I change it.
And how often do you find that you're doing your thing, because you're kind of going in blind because you're on the ground and this is more of a faraway shot? How often do you find yourself making mistakes and then having to kind of cover it up? Or is it something where you do so much planning ahead of time that the execution's a little bit easier? There's not as many mistakes that'll happen.
I saw him correct mistakes when he was actually out there and didn't even know he was correcting a mistake. Yeah, I didn't even know he was making mistakes till he told us.
But again, the mistake that was made, the one person, I'm not going to say who it was on the one side of the compass rose. So I said, well, you go do the other side of the compass rose. So that part, the same, I said, do it the same way. So you can't tell. It looked like it was a pattern.
We often talk about the rhythm of life in North Bay. For Amanda, that rhythm was fast. Hockey practices, baseball games, juggling a full-time career, and keeping up with 2 energetic boys. But life hit pause after routine surgery led to a call she never expected. Stage 2 breast cancer. No symptoms, no warning. Suddenly, Amanda was facing a double mastectomy, reconstruction, weeks of chemotherapy and radiation treatments, and several additional surgeries. The path ahead was overwhelming. Through every stage, one question stayed with her. How do I keep being mom for my boys? Amanda's care team at the North Bay Regional Health Center made all the difference. They understood how deeply she wanted to hold on to familiar routines, cheering from the stands, being there at bedtime, staying present in the moments that gave her strength. Their compassion kept her connected to the 2 people who kept her fighting. She stayed present, she stayed grounded, she stayed mom. This holiday season, help ensure patients have access to the exceptional care they need during life's most challenging moments. Your gift helps patients like Amanda stay connected to the people they love while strengthening healthcare for families across our region. Visit nbrhcfoundation.ca or call 705-495-8125 to give.
And we learned from Kim, too, Ben, that you don't like too many people out there to help. Helpers are appreciated, but as the artist, it's like you got to direct them, and you're trying to figure out other things as you go just to make sure you've got everything under control.
And I think you realize that why I plan it. I try to have them done ahead of time, all this lines in before people show up, because it's you're like herding cattle. You're trying to keep an eye on everyone and keep going.
Yeah, so again, Kim's mentioned you put these dowels that are about a meter in length, whatever they're wooden, and sort of those are kind of benchmarks or places so that when you can shoot other lines with the compass, because again, a lot of these are geometric shapes. But tell us about. I mean, this began as an avocation, and it's not your vocation, but you've done some commercial designs. So tell us a couple of stories about those, because that's intriguing too. Because the next thing you know, people want these kinds of things done because the images are only last for a certain length of time. But when you talk about marketing, if you're, if we were talking to Terry O'Reilly in The Age of Persuasion, the graphic, the icon can be instrumental in whatever product or service you're selling.
So I've done a few. Like I've had a lot of bites. People are asking me about stuff. So you do all the planning, and for some reason it doesn't go through. Like one time I was supposed to do one for an ad agency in Toronto, but that year they didn't get any snow, so it never happened. And then they're looking at another spot, and they changed their focus. And I did one with the PGA, but that wasn't in the snow. It was in grass, so that's another story yet.
Well, tell us about the lawnmowers, because
there's lawnmowers.
Yeah, there's
too?
lawnmowers. Like again, when as you start to do a little research and thought, how did you do that? There's no snow on the ground. So tell us about the lawnmower, and you have, of course, special lawnmowers.
Yeah, well, it's the same kind that they use in baseball fields, not the same kind of lawnmower, but the same concept. Baseball fields and golf courses where there's a roller behind it or in front of it, and that's what cuts the grass, and then the roller lays the grass down this way. When you come back the other way, it lays the grass down the other way. So when you take a picture of it, that's why it's light and dark on golf courses and baseball fields. So the PGA had contacted me. I was talking to the girl. It was in August. I wanted to do a snowshoe art. I says, well, there's no snow up here. And I figured I better cover myself and tell her that they're on top of the mountains, but I can't do the snowshoe art because it's hard on those in that snow. So, but I Googled her. She was raised in Brazil and went to university in Florida, so she didn't quite understand that. Anyways, they were going to do maybe a crop type circle where, the crop circles, which is the same concept. And long story short, the crops have basically all been harvested, so we couldn't go that way. So I came up with the idea about doing it on grass. And so I found the sod farm in Thunder Bay allowed us to go on it. And it was actually the Henry Stall, so the 4 Stall boys. It was their sod farm. So I did it there. But it was a lot of work because they have the big lawnmowers where the grass goes one way and I was going the other way. So it was quite a bit of work to get it to look right. And then with the Blue Jays getting their run, I figured we should do a Blue Jays logo. So I did that in Schreiber, and the grass wasn't the best, so you could see it pretty good. And then a couple of days later, I was flying out to Edmonton, and someone texted me, the Blue Jays logo looks really good. There was frost on the ground. And here I am at Thunder Bay, 2 hours away. I can't get a drone shot. I phoned a guy who had a drone, but he couldn't get his drone working. And but he climbed up the hill and got a picture of it. And then when I came back from out west, I said, you know what, I better put some dowels down for the winter time. So I was able to do it in Snowshoe Art. So that's on my sites also.
Cool. How long does it take for you roughly to do? I know it's going to depend on the size, but some of your snowshoe art, or even some of the lawn stuff and the grass stuff as well. How much of a journey is that? Because this, again, you have to go into, if you're going to AutoCAD and actually figuring it out, then you actually have to go out and do it. What's the process look like in terms of time?
Well, I'm just trying to, I'm thinking for the Olympic rings. So I was probably 3 hours laying it out. And again, it's like anything else. You have to take time to make sure, because it's based upon a rectangle, that you've got everything square. So that takes, you're walking back and forth. So you have to check this diagonal, that diagonal. And so maybe 3 hours. To packing it was about 3 hours, but I was hoofing it pretty good to get it done.
And you come from, as Bill told me, an education background. And so what got you into art? What got you into doing this? Was it something that you did? I believe, Bill, you said you were a principal, Kim, beforehand, but what is the connection maybe between some of the education stuff and art?
Well, if you back up a bit more, I'm a forester by trade. So I like doing stuff outside. But even when I taught, we'd make mazes in the schoolyard, where the kids would graph it out and we'd vote on which one. So I guess in a sense we were doing it back then, but most of the kids that I have taught will tell you, if we knew about that, we'd be doing quite a bit of that, what I was teaching them. And again, it'd all be working in the geometry. So I'd have myself covered as far as covering the curriculum.
So again, the lines are really important, Ben, and the compass. You've got to, especially for all these geometric shapes. And I was just thinking too. I was the fortunate recipient of a design on the lake and got to see the whole process. So I understand now. He's still bent. I could not do this. Now I've done some rudimentary things on top of Long Lake, looking down and done a heart or something. Then I'd go out there and think, was I able to scribe the heart in that heart shape, because you're just snowshoeing kind of out there, and then you're coming around to the curve, coming down, and then doing the other part, trying to get it symmetrical. And of course, when you're with Kim, you think, oh, I still don't quite understand. Brian and I talked about this on the way back, and then Brian tried something to do a curling stone. It wasn't, and it turned out very well.
It was good.
Yeah, it was good. But so here's another challenge I was thinking about. Ben and I were talking just before we came into the studio, is that I thought, we've had Sasquatch investigators on the Backroads Bill podcast. We've had a police chief from Sioux Lookout, who came on to tell us about his Sasquatch story. He kind of came out of the closet and told his entire story about Sabe, and because his whole life he thought no one would believe him, but he came on the podcast and Ken Dotis. And so I was just thinking, boy, next time I come up, or sometime, you should consider a Sasquatch out there in the lake. That would be pretty interesting in itself. I don't know. It would just be, we were just musing about it, and there you go. But where do some of the ideas come from? I know you get special requests.
Yeah, people request, and also I just look at pictures and drawings and just take a screenshot of them and then throw them into a folder and start looking through them and figure out what I can do when I'm going back to Jason Lake. Hopefully, I have to go out west next week, but I hope to do one there again.
And what's some of your favorites, 2 or 3, that again people will, once they get onto the 2 social media sites, and they go leafing through that, they'll have their own favorites. What are some of yours?
Probably, well, when you look at the favorites, it depends. I guess the favorites all have the best kind of snow, which is you get a nice 30 centimeter type imprint. And I did one at the driving range in Terrace Bay, and it was sort of like, it didn't turn out the way I wanted it. I had originally planned, but it turned out really good, and it's got a lot of paths that intersect, crossover, and whatnot. And then I actually had 12 people out that day doing it, so that was probably one of the better ones. And I like I said, I really liked the Olympic rings. It had a nice look to it. So, and I did the Canadian flag last year, but I had laid it out, and we had 2 snowstorms, but the winds were so hard I couldn't even make an imprint on it. So I will be doing that one again, probably around Flag Day next year, and hopefully I'll have the right kind of snow for it. But it'll be a big one.
So we talked a little bit about Sasquatch. One of the cool things that you probably don't know, Kim, but Bill has, and we had him on the podcast actually, was he has a wooden sculpture of Sasquatch Sam, which is at the Ecology Center. And I was kind of, when we were talking about Sasquatches beforehand, we talked a bit about ice sculpting. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of your ice sculpting that you do, because it's actually a really neat. Oh, Bill, you want to say something?
No, but just because when his spare time he does all these ice sculpting, and when we were up there, I was intrigued just about how you make these big ice blocks, and that's part of the preparation. Like, where do you get the ice blocks from? Never mind the sculpting and the tools, but it's a good question, Ben.
Yeah, so maybe just take us a little bit through your process from collecting the actual ice itself to maybe some of the tools that you need to use to actually complete some of these sculptures.
Okay, well, so the process, I've got the bags that if you see commercial ice sculpting where they have the big displays and they've got all the blocks laid out, they're 10 inches by 10 by 20 by 40. So I've got those bags, and I built some metal forms, and it's evolved over the years about how I insulate them and whatnot. But I've got pumps that circulate the water through. The bottom's exposed to metal. So the theory is the impurities are in the circulated water, and the water starts freezing from the bottom up, and the impurities are in the circulated water. For instance, when you have an ice cube, it's usually white in the middle. That's because the impurities get trapped because it freezes all over top of it. Whereas lake water is perfect for making, like, if I could get a system set up on Lake Superior where we could start harvesting blocks from there, that's the perfect water, because lake, it freezes from the top down and nothing gets trapped in it, whereas my ice blocks from the bottom up. So you get that real clear ice.
Yeah, because that's what you want, is the clear ice.
When I first started making them, I just had them on a pallet. So then there's about 15 inches of ice with a little bit in the middle. So the 10-inch ones are 300 pounds. So these were probably 400 pounds. Well, I had a heck of a time getting them lifted up. So then I built the pallet up a little higher, about a foot. They're still hard to get up, but now I've got them up 2 feet, so I can slide them off. At least I can manipulate them that way a bit.
And what do you use to cut? Like, are you using like sawzalls or those kind of, or even chains? I know, like with wood sculpting, they use like chainsaws and stuff. What are you using to actually carve it?
No, I've got chainsaws. I've got 3 different kinds of chainsaws: a 20-inch blade, a 16-inch blade, and a 10-inch banana type blade, where you can get in carving more. Die grinders with some pretty aggressive 4-inch bits on it. And chisels. And it all depends on the shape. Sometimes your chisel's your best friend. Sometimes the die grinder's your best friend, or the chainsaw. But the chainsaw more for the rough work.
And do you ever issues with it, like cracking the ice itself? Because I feel like you have to be pretty careful, right? Like, you know, one wrong hit and the whole thing kind of.
It happens, Ben. It happens.
It happened to me, actually. I had this horse, and it was, anyways, I had made it, and I had it displayed. I moved it around a few times, and then we were going out for supper. My wife said 5 more minutes. I looked around. There wasn't anyone in the neighborhood outside. So I thought, I'll move it on my own. It was cold that day. And I just touched it on the cement, the corner of it. It smashed. So, yeah, you have to be cold. You have to be careful with the cold. And even if I'm joining pieces, I'll use heat. For instance, I've got a couple of irons with a metal plate. I'll heat the metal plate and melt the surface. And then you can put the 2 surfaces together. And if it's too cold, you know, they'll crack when you're putting the heat on. So you have to be careful that way.
Have you done any wood sculpting before, or is it just ice?
Well, just a couple of bears.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I've got a few logs ready to go. So I'm busy in the summer too, so I don't get to do it all the time.
Well, I was going to ask you that. Do you have a letdown? You know, here's a person that loves winter and being outside, but is there a letdown when the winter comes to an end? Because it is approximately 3 months or thereabouts, and of course you do the stuff with the lawnmower, the designs with the lawnmower. But I guess it's good to give the mind a break as well.
No, it is. Yeah, you sort of look and just start looking for designs and what you can do next year. And hopefully someone might call you to do something. So,
well, Ben, I don't know. There might be something in the drinking water in Scriber, because, of course, we had Rage Innovet from talking about the Fire Rocks. He's a subscriber. And then the next thing you know, you find the Snowshoe Art Guy there. And we find all kinds of interesting people on the Backroads and roads. And Kim, thanks a lot for being on the Backroads Bill podcast today.
Okay, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. And hopefully we'll get you back again someday for something a little bigger. Something that'll take more than an hour and a half. Got to get you out there for the day.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it's going to be that Sasquatch, because now I'm intrigued with that.
Well, a big thank you to Kim for coming on the show. And again, make sure to go check out his stuff on socials. I will put links in the description for his Facebook and Instagram accounts, so you can also see the awesome work he does outside of some of the visuals that we showed on the actual podcast itself. Kim was an absolutely phenomenal person to talk to. Very passionate about what he does and is very good at it. So again, thank you so much to Kim for jumping on. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want more episodes of the Backroads Bill podcast, you can find out new episodes every single Wednesday, which they drop. And if you want to go to the backlog of the other 130 odd episodes that we've done so far, you can go through that backlog on any of your favorite podcast players, Apple, Spotify, and the video version is available on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel. And of course, our entire backlog, including this episode, is available on northbayecho.ca, where you can find this show and a slew of other local North Bay and area shows. So thank you so much for joining us. We will see you again next Wednesday for yet another Backroads adventure.